Okay, so in this video, I'm going to do just a very quick edit. Oh, I need to reset it on one of my newborn babies. So I am going to start off by cropping. So top right hand panel, there is a little tool up here and a little square with little dash marks. I'm going to pull this down and I'm going to make a nice little square shape. Just for me, this looks just a little bit more aesthetically pleasing as a kind of square shaped baby, so I like that enter. And then next thing I'm going to do is get the white balance, so I'm going to pick a neutralish colour, see what it comes up with. It's very blue and I'm not so keen on the coldness. Some people like that look, but if you pull the slider over slightly you can get a whole load of different looks. So I want it a little bit warmer, so I'm going to pull it over to about there. I'm going to add a little bit of green because I kind of like that little earthy look to the babies. I like it because it's like I work with a lot of wood and baskets, so I just find that looks really, really nice. So maybe it's a bit too much green, I'm going to slightly reduce that. But that around that is really, really nice. I am then going to mostly play around in the basic sort of panel. So exposure, I think the exposure is pretty good. The contrast, I'm gonna add a little bit. The highlights, I'm gonna pull down slightly because it's a little bit white on baby's hands. Shadows, I'm just gonna add a little bit of shadow in there, just because it does add depth to it. And the whites I'm gonna leave, and the blacks I'm gonna pull out a little bit, just because where it was got those blue highlights, it basically means it's too black. And if you print it, it will just look really not that good. Next thing I'm going to do is clone out these little white bits of specks of dust on the floor. So up here, this little circle with the arrow, that is your clone stamp, and it will clone out. So I just like slide it around to suit another area. So you click on the circle and then the other circle you just move around to match up, and it will literally make the little specks disappear, which is great. So I'm just going to edit. I'm going to edit the worst ones. The rest is just to give you an idea of what I'm doing. Even up here, like these little bits of dots up here, you can get rid of all of this, or you could leave it if you like the detail. So that's done. I'm going to close that panel down. Next thing I'm going to do is not going to add clarity because it's a baby. I want to keep it kind of soft. If it was a man, I might keep it or have more of a rough feel to it, so I would add clarity. But for this, what I'm actually going to do is increase the vibrance and reduce the saturation just slightly. If you reduce the saturation all the way, it'll take you to a black and white, and if you sort of put it in the middle, it will be like a sepia-ish tone if you add some yellows and oranges. But I am just balancing out this. I do that with all the pictures, and it's just a slight adjustment. You don't necessarily have to if you don't feel it needs it. The next thing I'm going to do is add a curves adjustment, so just a very small S-shaped curves adjustment. You see that? I don't know if you noticed how it just popped out a little bit more by that small little adjustment. If a shortcut on the keypad is the slash key or backslash key, and that just gives you the before and after. So I'm just going to do that now. So there's your before, there's your after. So before and after. I think already it looks like massively better, so hopefully you are benefiting from this. And the next thing I'm going to do, just because the basket is a little bit too yellow for my liking, I'm going to pull down out the yellows just slightly. I'm being very mindful though of the baby's face because there's yellows there. What you'll find is a lot of skin tones are in the yellows and the oranges, so look, if I slide that scale, you see how much it affects the baby's face there. I mean, not too much on the baby's face with the yellow, so that's why I can pull it down slightly like that. Yeah, a bit more forgiving. But yeah, so that's like already a significant amount of your edits done. Next thing we'll do is add a vignette around it, just to really sort of engulf the baby and make it pop out and stand out to you. So with that, I am going to use the radial tool, which is the other circle here next to the brush tool, and I'm going to click on that. I'm going to pull it down. It will make an oval shape. Use that little dot in the middle to pull it right down. And then I'm going to uninvert it and just tweak the exposure slider, and bring it down slightly. And then can you see what I've done? It's just made it darker around the edges. It's really nice like that. I'll close that. I'm going to show you the before and after again. There's the before, there's the after, and I just think that looks so much better already. Then the last thing is this gradient tool up here, again next to the radial one, and I'm going to pull this up there, and again a very tiny bit of darkness and maybe a little bit of the blue up there as well, just to break it up a little bit, give it a different tone, and close that off. And then the last thing, I'm going to go back to the radial tool. This time I'm going to make a little circle that's going to fit on my baby's head. This is my baby. I'm going to increase the exposure this time, slightly, really like I'm teeny really slightly. And then I'm going to take out the shadows so that the lines aren't so dark, and I'm going to pull out the blacks. So again, it just softens everything. And then the clarity I'm going to reduce, because if the baby's eyes were open, I'd want to maybe add clarity to make it pop out. But because it's shut, so we can just soften the whole face whilst you're in Lightroom. It just reduces the work in Photoshop, because if you do take it into Photoshop for any reason, you just kind of don't really want to be doing too much more to it. So I'm going to close that off. And for me, I think that looks really beautiful as it is. If I did take it to Photoshop, it would be literally if I felt the lines on the forehead needed softening more, or these darker bits under the eyes needed a bit more softening, or the darkness coming out, or these little tiny specks up here, I might just spend a bit more time on that. But overall, in terms of the colour and how I want my image to look, I'm happy with it. So again, I'll just finish with a before and after. There's your before, and there's your after. So I hope this has really helped you. All my videos will just be using a set amount of tools. This was a nice summary, I think, of what I do. And then like what I might try and do is focus on separate tools in other videos. So yeah, hope it's been good, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.